everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Globecast. I'm your host, Sunlight, and today I'm really excited to have with me here today Maria Lema, co-founder of Weaver Labs. Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hi, Sunlight. Really good. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, just to start, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. My background is Telecomms. I'm a PhD in wireless communications. I started doing my research in 4G, ended up doing it in 5G because PhD takes a bit of time. And when I finished doing my PhD, I started working at an innovation lab at King's College London. It was called the 5G Tactile Internet Lab, and it was funded the majority by Ericsson, the equipment vendor company, the telecoms equipment vendor company. And there my role was essentially to understand why we needed 5G and what was actually going to come after the use of mobile phones in the mobile industry. And that gave me the opportunity of working with all sorts of really cool projects. And as the name of the lab was Tactile Internet, we were looking at how 5G could essentially increase the number of sensors that you could transmit over the internet. And that led us to work with all sorts of stuff like haptics, meaning transmitting the sense of touch over the internet. And how can that, bring all sorts of new applications for healthcare, gaming, theater, and so on and so forth. So yeah, my background is telecoms, but I've been working for a very long time in digital transformation for vertical industries.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know there was such a huge significance of 5G for such a range of industries. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's supposed to be the first generation of telecommunications standard or protocols that are able to actually have an impact in businesses, that it's not, just the consumer market.
That's incredible. Wow. So it's not just telecoms that it's going to make a positive impact in.
I mean, it's the fact that wireless kind of like underpins most of the innovations that are happening in smart cities, healthcare, smart homes, and Industry 4.0. Connectivity is kind of like the pipes where all of these cool applications run on top. And 5G is just the beginning for that.
Amazing. You had it here first.
Yeah.
Great. So could you tell me a little bit about, right now, what are maybe the challenges that the telecoms industry faces, and how does Weaver Labs use decentralization to fix these challenges?
That's a really interesting and timely topic right now here in the UK and I guess across the globe as well. One of the main challenges, as I said, is that telecoms underpins all of the innovations that are happening, right? So, for example, we're all talking about how VR and, all these cool gaming use cases and, healthcare, Industry 4.0, automotive, self-driving cars and all that stuff, that needs a network that works and that it's available. And there is a huge burden being put into telecom operators, such as the ones that we use with our mobile phones, to invest in that infrastructure. And there's no clear return on investment for these very much specialized applications, right? So the biggest challenge right now is to understand how do we provide universal connectivity that it actually attends to all of the use cases, that it's not just our mobile phones connecting to the network. And the way that we think that decentralization can help, and the way that we attempted at solving the problem, and it's the use of blockchain as a way to solve a commercial supply chain problem, right? So the way that we see is that the infrastructure investment is a problem that exists in the market because there is no way to knit together infrastructure that exists by different players. So we use blockchain to aggregate infrastructure that can be placed by different players in a city. So by decentralizing the supply chain, we allow different players to feel that they can invest and belong to a larger pool. Very much like the Bitcoin network did with banking, right? Anyone can contribute with the resources and running a node. And the same has been happening in all of these decentralized projects. We believe that the same can happen with telecoms, and that infrastructure can be invested by different players, and using blockchain, we just add that governance layer that essentially knits together all of this infrastructure.
Okay, amazing. Right. So, can you tell us a little bit about B2B and the marketplace, and how Weaver Labs utilizes the B2B marketplace?
We think that the way that people access telecoms infrastructure, it's difficult to, it's difficult to access the assets that exist in a city, to discover them. And it is very difficult to understand what exists in a city. So, for example, if I want to deploy some sensors here in this city, I have no idea what kind of connectivity I have. I have no idea which poles I can use to mount my sensors. I have no idea if there's fiber, 5G, 4G, nothing. So when we came up with the idea of Weaver Labs, the idea was to make all of these assets exist together in a common marketplace and make them discoverable for whoever wants to consume this connectivity. And telecoms, it is a construction of different elements of a supply chain. So you have the fiber, you have the equipment, you have the antennas, and it's quite complicated to get one single network up and running. So the marketplace is the place where everyone meets in a city, right? So if I were to interact with that marketplace, I want to come here and deploy a sensor network, for example, I would use the marketplace to understand which assets I can use to mount my sensors, and which assets I can use to connect my sensors to the network without having to interact one by one with all of the sellers.
So what is the significance of smart contracts and NFTs in the B2B marketplace?
So the fact that an asset can be digitized, right? So let's try and define what an asset is first. There are different types of assets that exist in this marketplace. So as I said, if I want to build a sensor network in this city, what the first thing I need to do is to understand where I can mount this sensor, right? So for example, say I'm going to use a street light for that, street furniture for that. So that piece of street furniture can be digitized. We can create a digital twin and represent that asset in the marketplace so that it can be transacted with. The same when I want to put an antenna, or the same when I want to access a type of connectivity. Everything can be digitized, and a digital version of that asset can exist in the marketplace. An NFT and a smart contract is a way to assign rights to use it and to transact with the value of that. So the different steps for us is, okay, first we grab all the data of the real life asset that exists in the city. We build a schema around that. We onboard that into the platform. And then when someone wants to interact with that digital twin or digital version of the asset, we use a smart contract to settle the agreement between the two parties. So in this case, for example, in the case of a street light, it would be the public sector, local authority owning the street light, who puts this asset into the marketplace to be used. And then the smart city company who wants to use it reserves the asset or transacts with the asset. And the use of the smart contract and the NFT it's completely transparent for them. They don't need to know. It's just that then in the blockchain exists an agreement between the two parties that exists, and they can use that asset for that purpose.
We were talking about the different industries, right? So can you tell us a bit about the different industries that Weaver Labs has partnered with, and how, the blockchain technology has helped in these industries?
Sure. One of the most interesting one, I think, it's the transport sector, smart city sector. So it is probably our largest project to date, and it has enabled us an expansion in the UK, which is something that we are really grateful for. So we started working with Transport for Greater Manchester, which is a transport authority in the northern part of England, and with also a smart city company that it's called Vivacity Labs. And they built reinforcement learning sensors that actually what they do is they control the traffic light system. So within the transport sector, the use of these sensors, it's really good to prioritize traffic force, or to promote active travel, for example, or to control the carbon, emissions. And controlling the traffic lights has a huge impact in productivity as well. So that can be actually measured in cost. And Transport for Greater Manchester said, okay, so we want to deploy these sensors. And these sensors need to be connected to the internet because they are running an AI algorithm. And the problem is that at 5 p.m., when everyone gets out of the office and connects to the network, the sensors don't have the access to the quality of service that required for such a mission critical application. So we started working with them, scoping this 5G private network for them with the idea of the dig once approach. So if I am going to dig the streets to place this sensor, why not dig the streets to play the sensor and also build a 5G network? Of course, the sensor doesn't need a 5G network to function, but then there is an excess of network capacity that can be sold in the marketplace and create a source of revenue for the transport authority or a sustainability budget coming into, right? And that's exactly what we are pursuing with them. It is leveraging the capital cost of investing in a network, but then using that for further use cases on top. And then it's when we look at other industries. So for example, we have social care. Even with COVID, we have seen that we're trying to move the patient outside of the hospital and at home. And with all of these new applications and new sensors coming in, there is a risk of people not being included in healthcare if they don't have access to connectivity. And it's not like we're increasing the digital divide only because they don't have access to Wikipedia. They don't have access to healthcare services. So from the public sector perspective, healthcare and social care, it is something they can benefit with a private 5G network that is specifically for public services, precisely on the public sector use cases that we worked in UK. But then we also use SalesTech, our reference client, the peer node, to look at other, for example, supply chain management. So how can I track a good that it has been traveling all across the globe in areas where I don't know if I have access to connectivity? So we've also worked with European Space Agency and other two companies in Germany, Data and Aurora Tech, where we have developed a proof of concept using SalesTech of this network in a box to help humanitarian aid and use cases to track goods across the globe. And right now we are looking at how can we use SalesTech to integrate public networks and private networks. So for example, this private network that Transport for Greater Manchester has created. This is great, but then maybe someone like a mobile network operator wants to access it as a service, right? So this integration, it's another use case that we are implementing as well. And blockchain is the underlying technology that makes this possible, right? So the selling the excess of network capacity, or even, popping up a network all of a sudden in a remote area of the world, the distributed ledger it's what helps us achieve that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it seems like it's really an inclusive network, right? To include people who might have, otherwise been excluded.
Yes, totally. I think that stems from the fact of who makes the decision of investing in network infrastructure. And as I said at the beginning, there's a huge burden being placed in mobile network operators to do the investment, but they have a requirement to make money out of that investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes complete sense. Whereas there are other players that have different incentives to invest in infrastructure. For example, this building here, they must be incentivized to provide you with good connectivity so that you rent an office space here. And then they can go ahead and do that investment and connect to the network so that they are included in that participation, and they can actually make business out of it because they can do it now. And of course, the social use cases are the most important ones nowadays, right? We've seen with COVID that people need to study, work from home. If you don't have access to good internet, that's not going to be possible.
No. Not at all. So we've talked about inclusivity and, diversity. So could you tell me a little bit more about, more pillars of blockchain technology in intercoms, such as interoperability and security? And
I think that the blockchain, it's giving us an underlying technology that can tackle a little bit all of the problems that we are seeing in the telecom supply chain. First one being interoperability, right? Classic networks, what they do is like we have a Wi-Fi network, we have 5G network, we have satellite network, and it's very difficult to make them interoperate. And the problem it's not at an infrastructure level, or it's more a governance problem. So the use of blockchain to enable interoperability across different infrastructures, it is just because it creates this ability to not trust each other. And in that trustless environment, we can create a link between us, right? And that at the same time solves a problem with security. Traditionally, networks use a perimeter-based model. So I am safe as long as I communicate within my confined area. And what happens when we connect infrastructure that belongs to different players, it's that I leave my perimeter area. So I generate a lot of risks and threats, cybersecurity threats. So blockchain helps with the zero trust model and enable that so that the perimeter is shrinked to actually the node in the network. So we leverage the PKI infrastructure from blockchain to do that.
Okay, that's great. It's funny, in security, zero trust is a good thing, right?
It is. Yeah. Trust no one.
Trust no one.
Exactly.
You were talking about the really exciting project that you had with Transport for Greater Manchester. Are there any more exciting projects that you can tell us about?
I wish I could tell you about one that is really, really exciting, but so far we can't talk about it much. But we definitely want to, as I said, work on this. We are going to work on this public-private integration of networks in the next year, and also looking at launching the proof of concept or the trial pilot of the NFT platform for public sector assets. We are working now with our partners to get the digital twin versions of the assets on the streets. And right now we're able to transact with, active networks. So with the 5G networks, and putting what we call the passive assets. So, the street lights, the traffic lights, the cabinets, and so on and so forth, and being able to transact with those and having that pilot project towards next year, something we're really excited about, because showing the capability of an NFT outside of something that's completely virtual, and it actually relates to something that it's in real life.
Yeah, it's tangible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it is a problem that it exists right now. So the fact that we cannot see what's available and we can't transact with it in an easy way, it is impacting the rate at which we deploy telecoms infrastructure. And it is a major problem right now, so much that the UK government has now, intervened in the fact of how we attempt to do these transactions between the assets that belong to the public sector and whoever wants to access them to deploy infrastructure.
Well, that's amazing. I can't wait to see what Weaver Labs comes up with. And, hopefully a couple months down the line, we'll see Weaver Labs has, come up with these exciting projects. And then maybe then we could catch up and then you can actually tell me.
Awesome. That would be awesome. I think we have some super exciting partnerships lined up, some really cool announcements coming up as well. And I think next year it's going to be extremely exciting for us, bringing, the blockchain to life with all of our partners.
Yeah, busy.
Yes, really busy and exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below who you think we should interview next. So to find out more about Maria, please follow the links down below. See you next time.
Bye.